Today's episode is going to be so good. I have my friend Frankie Jean, and I actually had to go look up her last name because I think I've seen it a million times, but I never really paid attention because with a name like Frankie Jean, I just feel like you don't really necessarily need a last name, but she's Frankie Jean Ellis. Don't tell your husband I said that because I'm glad that you
Oh,
have. I'm glad that you didn't just stick with the Frankie Jean, but it's just so good and it's so cute. And the best part is it's just so you. So I am excited to to tell the listeners a little bit about you. So she has so many really cool parts of her story and so many things that are really just inspiring and encouraging about her. But she is just, if you're just listening to this and you haven't ever met her before, let me just paint this picture of this big ball of sunshine. She is glitter, she is flowers, she is unicorn rainbows, but she's also so much depth. Like it's not just the fluff and the flowers and the glitter, but it is so rooted in strength and honesty and loyalty and just so many things that I notice about you in that way, which is one of the big reasons why I wanted to talk to you. But she has a really cool part of her story of joining the military. So she's specifically in the Coast Guard as like an 18 or 19-year-old, which is just unbelievable. She's also a mother of two, and your daughter has CF. So that's
yeah.
been just like another part of your story that has really given you not like a chance to grow, but kind of forced you to grow in ways that maybe before you hadn't tapped into. She's a leader in Young Living. And also she has two clothing boutiques, Enchanted on Main is what it's called. And the coolest part about your boutique is I feel like you've done such an incredible job of like taking what you feel on the inside or maybe what you see, and that's what you're putting out there. Like, I know this is meant for me, but I think you're all going to love it too. So that's so fun for me to watch and see and like encourage you doing this because it's so cool. But and your husband Luke, right? I'm just proud.
Yeah.
How do I know his name? You must talk about him a lot, which I love. But
Main characters for sure.
he's a main character in your show. But so I am always drawn to people who are like multidimensional, who have their hands in a lot of things, because obviously that's like one of my things is I like to be involved in a lot of different areas. And we both know, and maybe we can agree that there's like the best parts of that, but there's also like really hard parts of carrying and balancing so many things. Like, would you agree with that?
Totally. Yeah. I feel like every day I wake up and I'm like, how am I going to get all these things done? But I think I've learned a lot over this last year how to prioritize, set boundaries, and accomplish all of that.
Mm,
So it's been cool. It's been a cool journey into that.
yeah.
Some days are really cool, but
So what else should the listeners know about you?
so yeah, I think I've been on my own since 18. I feel like I was talking to a group of my girlfriends that are about to graduate college. They actually work for me. And I was just telling them, like, how cool is it that you get to look at your life? Like they're not married. They don't really know what they want to do with their life yet. And I'm like, I look at that as like, how cool. Like you have the entire world at your fingertips. And then they ask me like how I got here. And I'm like, I left when I was 18. I knew there wasn't going to be anything for me in my
Mm.
hometown. I grew up in a really small part of Florida, outside of Ocala. We basically had Walmarts and McDonald's, and I just knew in my soul, I didn't know, what I know now about myself, but I just knew I was meant for more. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Yeah.
but I just knew I was going to do big things with my life. And I signed the papers when I was 17. I was like, I'm just going to go. I actually went a month after I turned 18 on the 26th of May, graduated high school on the 28th of May, and I left July 7th
Wow.
of that year. So true, like I just left, and you know,
Was this common for anyone in your life or like in your family?
my dad was in the military. He actually
Okay.
just retired. So I grew up as a military kid. I traveled a lot. We kind of set roots in Florida, so I'm really
Okay.
grateful for that. I went to the same high school, but I wouldn't say it's very common. All my friends went, to college or stayed home, but I
Wow.
just, I just knew in my bones that I was meant to do that.
That's so
So
cool. Because that takes a lot of
yes,
courage, right? It's like you're a woman
oh,
and like it's
a
there's a
man's
lot.
world.
Yeah. And it's like an
Yeah.
intimidating place, you know? So I think that's really cool that you even just trusted yourself to step into that power or to
Yeah.
discover, like go to a place where you were going to discover that part of your power. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing.
It was really cool. So I left and I went in boot camp and I got stationed on a 270-foot boat. So I was deployed about 260, I think, days out of the
Wow.
year, first year in the military. And I ended up meeting my husband on that deployment. And I just knew I was going to marry him. I know that's crazy too. Everybody's like, how did you get married so young? But I think I just grew up really fast. So I married him at 21. We moved to Georgia. I got out of the military and then we had our daughter. And 6 weeks later, we found out she had cystic fibrosis, which
Mm.
just, they don't teach you like anything like that. I don't think anything could have ever prepared me for that. Nobody in my
Yeah.
family had it. And for those first few years, I felt like I just lived in a bubble. Like I was
Mm.
so scared to live my life and I was scared for people to come over and I was just scared for her. And I'm so grateful that I crawled out of that space because I
Yeah.
know now, like, I have so many regrets about that, but I knew,
Mm.
you're doing the best you can as a new mom. And there was so much that comes with that. She was so sick. And that got us into Young Living, which we
Mhm.
did. I mean, I'm still a top leader in Young Living, and I'm so grateful for that company. It taught me so much about myself. And we hit the top rank in 2 years, one of the top ranks.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just thought, man, like maybe if I run with this, I could get my husband home from the military. And so I ran as hard as I could. I did all of the things, still my primary income to this day. And in 2020 in March, before we knew that the world was like going to shut down,
Yeah.
we bought a house randomly in North
Wow.
Carolina. We were living in Miami, Florida at the time. And I was like, I just want to live by family and I just want to set like,
Mm. Yeah.
and so we moved here and literally 2 days later, the world shut down. So I worked so hard for all these things. And then it felt like I got here and it was like almost like for what? Like I got so
Ah,
discouraged.
yeah.
I ran, I gave my heart and soul for years to build this, to have this house, to have all these things. And I just remember like walking down, or I was driving to the gym. This was one day, and I just truly felt God being like, you are here to build a community of women. And I
Mm.
was like, I do not feel worthy of that. I'm depressed. I don't feel any joy. I'm like, I
I'm new
work so,
here.
I'm new here. I don't know anybody. Like, who wants to be my friend? And he said but I just heard it and I just trusted that. And I didn't know what that looked like. This was in September of 2020. So I'm like freshly new here. And then I got a call in October about a boutique. Somebody asked me to buy out their boutique in October, um, right after this. And it just, again, felt like
Crazy.
something I had to do. I know. I'm like, this has always been my dream, like a little voice in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But I deal with imposter syndrome. I'm like,
Mm.
who am I to like buy a boutique and like have this brand behind me? And so we said, yeah, I just did a blind. I didn't know Shopify. I didn't know anything. I couldn't tell. I didn't even know where you
Wow.
bought
Yeah.
clothes. And I just said, sure, which is such an Enneagram 7 thing. And
Which I
so,
actually was like connected with you at that time where you
yeah,
literally like
I met
kind of
you.
right. So which is
Yeah,
so crazy. And I actually want to back up to the season of
yeah,
where you like how did you build trust with yourself in order to get to a place where you would pick up your entire life and just
yeah,
like move somewhere else? Like that's a big
yeah.
deal for people, you know?
Huge deal. I think it's important to say too that I'm not scared of change. I feel like I've
Mm.
grown up in it. I've moved so
Okay.
much. I actually really
Yeah.
thrive on picking up and completely changing my life and
Mm.
meeting people. That
That
doesn't
gives me
scare
like
me.
IBS. I also live like 20 minutes from where I was like born and raised. So there.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, we're all so different in that way, but I
Mhm.
love meeting people. I love like having new surroundings. I'm so
Yeah.
used to that. We've moved we actually had a conversation. I'm like, this is gonna be the first time that we're not moving in 4 years. I mean,
Oh, wow.
hopefully.
Yeah.
We've been here 3 years in March, but I'm like, what does that look like for us? And he
Mm.
was like, I think we should just enjoy the season and see where it leads us. But I kind of love that. But I also had a different picture of what it was going to look like. And I think that's why I got so
Mm.
disappointed when I got here. And I'm like, I don't have friends. Why did I move my whole life where it was
Yes.
comfortable and I was thriving? And so that was the first time that I was really scared. And like, I
Okay.
felt,
This is really good. And actually, you've mentioned this twice, so I'm going to bring it up for you and I'm going to bring it up for the listeners because we talked first about when your daughter was diagnosed with CF and you were like, no one or nothing could have prepared for me. And there is a little bit of beauty in life when we don't see the big picture. Like we want to see the end. We want to see exactly what each step looks like. But when we are a little bit naive to situations, when we don't understand like how hard they can be, it's like, yes, would we like to be prepared and to understand, but also sometimes when we're thrown into these seasons where we didn't even know that was like a possibility for, our daughter to be born and then have this disease, or I had this beautiful picture and it felt so good and so right. And so I went for it. And then all of a sudden the picture didn't look like what I thought it was going to be. But it's like, sometimes we have to be grateful for like that naiveness in us, or like just because it really goes back to like how much trust we have in ourselves, because we know that things aren't always going to work out exactly how we want them to. But when we can trust like the feelings within us, obviously our brains are going to create these pictures of what things are going to look like. But also it really does, it happens that it doesn't, like the result doesn't look like what we had pictured in our mind. And it can be really, really defeating, right? And so in those moments, instead of like losing trust with yourself, like, I made a horrible decision, like now the world shut down, I don't have anyone, like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? You were like open and listening. And it was this call to like create a community of women, right?
Yeah.
And how beautiful is that even when things don't work out or look like what we thought, if we're open to what is to be, then those things will come to us, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's taught me so much, truly, like to just trust like my inner self a lot more and to rely on God a lot more, like to really pray when I'm stressed. I feel like I took my relationship with God for like granted almost until I moved here and I hit rock bottom. And out of rock bottom, like I feel like I found my calling, which is so cool. And like I'm so grateful for those lessons because I wouldn't be here if I didn't hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I don't know what my life would look like if the world was open when we moved here. Like I can't say that I'd be in this position. So I'm so grateful for those lessons. I'm grateful for my daughter, and gosh, like that's like the most beautiful thing ever now, like has become such a testimony, and I've been able to help so many women not live in fear because of the things that I've went through with her too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the growth that happens when we're like forced into what you're referring to as like rock bottom. Sometimes when I think of rock bottom, I picture like we like land somewhere and then like the breaking happens, but instead of it like the break and the crumble, it's like the break to shed. So I picture like we land somewhere and there's cracks that happen and it's a break, but it's actually just like dropping off layers that maybe were protecting us, or maybe that we were afraid of, or maybe that like we're angry, or their emotions or experiences or past experiences, like whatever it is. But the break is like what allows for the material to crack and to fall off of us so that we actually can like grow and become and even be like a more true version of ourselves.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that.
I see that. And I've actually seen that in you, like over the last couple of years, like watching and observing. I'm always watching and observing everyone, no pressure. And it's not like out of judgment. I'm like genuinely like, I love to just see people really step into themselves and to learn, and maybe to make mistakes or to have really hard times or whatever it is. Right. But over the last few years, like I have seen you really just like go inward and also decide what you want your life to look like or who you want to be. So I would love to kind of talk about like the season of growth that you've been experiencing, and maybe like what that's like for you, and not just like the good, exciting parts, but like what hard things have really taught you or encouraged like personal growth and trust.
I think something you said to me, honestly, the first round when I first met you, I kept saying this phrase and I kept saying, I don't know what I'm doing. And you literally looked at me, it scared me to death. And you were like, you need to stop saying that. And I, like, when anybody's direct with me, it gives me anxiety. But I took a step back and I was like, I need to actually stop saying this, because no, I don't know these things, like, as far as like boutique ownership, like, no, I don't know how to order clothes and like Shopify. I don't know any of that. But I think when you said those things to me, I was like, no, I have what it takes to do all this. It's going to be hard work, but I need to like step it up.
Do you want to know what? This morning on like my group coaching call, I made everyone think of a phrase that is the story that they're telling themselves every single day and the message that it is. And that's exactly what you were doing in that moment. It's like telling this story to keep you safe, but also from holding you accountable for progress or growth. Or, it's like we just make it real messy so that we don't have to do anything. Actually, the phrase that I use against myself is like, I'm a mess. And it's like, if I'm a mess and if I say that and if I know that and believe it and everyone around me hears me, then like no one's going to be annoyed when they get in my car and it's a mess, or no one's going to expect that, you know what I mean? It's like, I lose that expectation when really it's like, this mess is making me uncomfortable. And up until now, it's been hard for me to figure out how to create that order, or like at that moment, you didn't have all the answers, but like you didn't need to have all the answers. All you needed to do is know that you were capable, that it was something that you wanted to do, and be open to learning. So paying attention to those phrases that we're speaking over and over in ourselves and seeing how they're putting us like on this wheel rather than on a path to move forward is super important. And I don't remember that, but I'm really glad that I said that to you. So
I will never forget that. And that gave me permission to be like, no, you know what? You don't know everything, and that's okay. And it like almost made me like step up. It really challenged me. I heard you saying that to me so many times when I felt like I wasn't like good enough. When I felt like people were judging me, when I felt like even I was judging myself. I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, no, I can figure this out. Google, YouTube University, all of those things.
Literally.
Like, I let myself fail. Like there's so many things. I was talking to my manager this morning and I'm like, telling her all these things that we just learned from 2022 and going into like hiring for our next season. I'm like, we failed at this last year, and that's okay, but we learned, and like this is what we're going to ask for this time around. So I think it gave me so like permission to fail, and like it was actually beautiful. Like I'm so grateful for all of the things I failed at so far on this, because
it's actually there's a message about this, is that like, if you never step back enough to let something break, you don't know where like the lack is. You don't know where the missing pieces are. And this is really true for like mothers. It's true for like business owners. If you are so holding on so tight to everything and making sure everything's functioning exactly the way, like you'll never know where you actually need help or support, or because nothing will ever, you know what I mean? It's like, you have to step back and let things break so that you can see where you can, fill in the gaps.
Yeah. And I think for a long time, especially my Young Living business, like I was the leader, like I was the go-to person for all of this. And being in the position I'm in now with my business, like I'm not the person who knows everything. I actually have a really great team behind me that knows a lot more than I do. And I have to lean on them. And like for me to let go of that control has been really beautiful. Like truly,
that's so cool. And also it gives them a permission, and it gives them an opportunity to step into leadership. And like each season of our life is not going to look the same. And the role that we play in each situation of, even like in parenting right now, I'm learning that the role of like nurturer and physical holder and lover and carrier and provider in that way, it's like, I'm kind of like being pushed out of that position a little bit, if we're being honest. It's like, as they grow, that like, even if I'm really good at it, even if I think it's like my biggest strength, or even if it's like there are seasons in all things, and so like being willing to let go of that, because there will be a time when, they have a husband who is filling that role. And right now they're just getting more comfortable with themselves, or, so it is like being willing to let go in seasons where your role needs to shift and a change. It takes great humility, but it also gives other people an opportunity to rise.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm dealing with a similar situation with my kids in different ways. We put them in school this year, and to let go of that control from homeschooling has been crazy. Best thing ever. Hard season. I am very glad that I let it go of control, because I needed my team to step up for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
That's a hard thing. It's like the release, man. We're so much safer. And it is that false sense of security that we hold on to because we believe, you talked about being in that bubble with your daughter after she was diagnosed. And you're like, if I just shut out the entire world, then I can solve this problem. So when we're at risk with safety and our security, we go to the far extreme and control whatever we know how to control. Like you couldn't control her body, you couldn't control what's going on, but you're like, by damn, I'm going to control this entire house. I'm going to build walls. I'm going to block out the windows. I'm going to do everything I can. And that's just, it's so normal and so natural, but also like getting real with what does it actually mean for her to live? Like we're afraid she's not going to live. And so we're going to protect her from living. Probably was there a process of like when you're looking back and you see that, like when you were able to understand that lesson?
Yeah. It's been, and it's something that I haven't really talked a lot about. I think maybe in like a year, I'll be like happy to share like my story with her. But, she is in school now and I let those walls crumble. Like I knew a year ago in my heart that I had to put her in school. She just needs socialization. And it was getting hard to like walk that line as a mom and business owner and then like homeschooler. It just wasn't working, wasn't adding up. And the anxiety that I had to let go and work through to get to the point I'm at now, it's beautiful. But gosh, I just wish that I could like hug myself and like hug her and be like, she's going to be okay. I think also like I had to really work through this, but like God loves her more than I do. Like that's a very hard thing to let go. Speaking of control, like, he made her and he
like
knew
the trust
this is a journey, but I have to trust that. And as a mom, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. Harder than anything is to just realize that she's going to be okay. And like now she's thriving in school and, we've seen such a big improvement on her behaviorally and emotionally and all of that. But it's been a hard year. And that's something I've dealt with a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And, maybe in a year, like I hope that I can get on and like expand more on that. I feel like I get asked about her all the time. That is like the one she's so precious to me still. And I don't know if that's because I'm trying to like still control that situation.
Yeah.
But I will say like, if I listen to this back in a year ago, like I am so proud of myself for like the growth that I personally made. My husband has made on this last year. Cause it's tough. It is so tough to like trust other people with your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when, you're like, you feel like your job is to keep her safe and to keep her away from sickness. And so when she's going into buildings where that exists, like it almost feels like you're responsible. So I can totally see that, but also how beautiful it is that you've been able to see the results of your like release in her thriving. And in her thriving and her learning and connecting with people. Like what a beautiful life experience, and teaching her to be a little unafraid,
Yes. Yeah. That's what I want for her more than anything. It's just, she's so like, if you ever saw her, like, she's just the most fearless child I've ever met. And I'm so grateful for that. I've learned so much from her. I'd like to think she gets a lot of that from me, but
she does. Absolutely. She gets that from you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was even like that strong will, that like that strength that gave you the ability to actually control the situation, so there is because a lot of people are like, that's too much, like taking that on of controlling the whole situation. That's too much. So you can look at it both ways of like, yes, that was actually strength, but also it was out of fear. And so what did you want from it? And then, you were able to shift and change because of what you actually wanted. A phrase I have to say to myself often, and I know I don't deal with like the same situation that you deal with, but like I live with a lot of anxiety of something happening to my children. And there was a time when my twins were like 2 or 3 and going to the playground to watch them like play on the playground. I had the thoughts in my mind, like if they are on the playground, then they will walk to the end and then they will fall off and then they will die. And it sounds so dramatic, but it was so real to me. Or there were times when putting them in the car just felt like the most irresponsible thing I could ever do, because if we're in the car, then we'll crash. And if we crash, then we die. Like those were the real true thoughts that went through my mind. And I like the thoughts like that we're experiencing, no matter what the situation, of like that fear. And I had to do so much like healing work and surrender. And eventually my nephew got an inoperable brain tumor, and I was finally doing better. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. This is going to put me straight back to where I was. And then I realized that it actually saved me in another way, because it was like, you can do all the things.
Yeah.
But you can't, like, you could still get an inoperable brain tumor. Right. And it's like the phrase that I repeat still to this day is like, the fear does not stop death, but it stops life. And I repeat it. Yeah. Fear does not stop death. It stops life. And it's so interesting, because when the fear is the driver of our car, if you will, then we are not living. We are in panic. We are, it's like, think about that bubble that you lived in. It was like not living, but we were afraid that we weren't going to live, right? It's like, you're afraid that you're not going to live. So then we stop living to protect ourselves from not living. So it's like, fear does not stop death. It stops life. So what do we want life to feel like? And that's something that I've had to work really hard on, even though my situation is completely different than you. But I know that that's probably something that listeners, like, maybe they needed to hear, that of just like the release that can come to live a fulfilled, whole, thriving life. You're a beautiful example of that.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like so many moms, like and I'm guilty of this too, because I don't like going on my platform and talking about it.
Yeah.
And again, I really, really hope that I can like be brave enough to share more about this in the next year. But I feel like a lot of moms live in fear. Like I've just realized that being in my groups and small groups, it's so hard. It's
the most vulnerable. Yeah. It's the most vulnerable thing in the entire world that you could ever experience. It's like, here, 16-year-olds, here are the keys to the car, go drive it. Do you like that? No, it's, and then I'll have super anxiety one day and it's snowing outside. And then I'm like, oh, the girls are leaving to dance in like 20 minutes. So my internal mother compass of like, keep your kids alive and safe and well is like having a panic attack because it's snowing outside. And, but I have options of like shutting it down, all of it, or just trusting God, trusting them, trusting that all is okay and that we are here to live. Right.
That's so good. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine snow and 16-year-olds.
I know, it's really so horrible, but it's also like, we can't imagine all the things, right? But it's in that season of like trusting yourself, trusting others, and then watching the results come of the thriving, of the progress that is made not only for you, but like for your daughter. And there are so many life lessons from that I'm sure can be applied to so many different situations, but also like giving you permission to kind of lean into the boss role that you have at your shop and to nurture that part is also like a really cool example to your children of going after something that is important to you and like working really hard. What does that feel like for you?
It feels great, honestly. Like I'm very much the parent that like wants them to see us working. I have them help, even especially homeschooling. Like they put together my mail with me, tucked confetti into cards. Now it looks a little different, but we'll bring them to like events. And I just want them to, I want them to like realize that they can do anything. If that's the military, if that's college, if that's none of those things and opening their own business. Like I want them to thrive, and I want them to know that they could do anything that they set their minds to, and how cool and like what a privilege that is to be a mom that can show their kids that. So we really try to involve them, with everything. Like truly. I don't know if I feel like I've seen you on Instagram doing that too.
Yeah. There was a lot of years I would refer to it like a family farm, since we don't really have like a family farm, or the majority of us don't have that, where it's like a team effort. But my children have spent countless hours, pulling shirts out of bags, or, packaging stuff up, counting, separating, all the things, trying to involve them. I also like, now that I have employees who do most of like the physical part at my screen printing shop, then I try really hard to just keep, whenever I'm getting hired to speak somewhere, I talk to them about that. I share what it's about. I try to include them in, whatever I'm I'll tell them about podcast guests that have come on and maybe something that they shared. Or so I agree with you, is like including them as much as possible. One, so that they know where your time's being spent and why it feels important to you, but also to keep that creative mind open in them so that they can see that the possibilities are endless for wherever they choose to go.
No, I love that. You're such a good example of that. I actually really love following you for that. I always get inspired. But it really is cool.
There is something funny that happens though, and I think this is important to talk about too, when there's like something that triggers them a little bit when it's something connected to your work. And I haven't been able to put my finger on it, and maybe you're not in that stage yet, but there's something like they push some resistance against it. And so it would be really easy for me to like shut down and not talk about it or not include them or share, because there is some resistance there. And it is connected to like me work. And I don't know what I can't give you any information on that because I haven't been able to to understand why that is. I think it is like, I actually don't know. I'm still working and processing.
Yeah.
But I have found myself like, maybe I should just keep this to myself. Maybe I shouldn't share about this. Maybe I shouldn't include them or want them to be a part of it. Maybe I shouldn't, but then I have to ask myself, what result do I want when I do share? And the thing is like, I want them to see that I am a human. I am a functioning human that has wants and needs, that I am aware of those wants and needs, and that I'm willing to like do the hard things to be able to get what I want and need. I want them to see that nothing is like all sunshine, flowers, and rainbows, right? But also like that if you want things in life or you feel called to do certain things, then stepping into that, regardless of how hard it is, then you do it. And I want them to learn those things through me so that they have permission to do it for themselves. And I also want them to know that even when I have all of these things going on, if they need me, if they call, if they want something from me, that I can stop and turn and still choose them.
Yeah, that's been a really big lesson. My kids are only 9 and 5, so I feel like I'm not at that point yet with them.
You're still so cool.
I'm still the cool mom.
You're still so cool.
Yes. But I also remember like when I didn't think my parents were cool, but I would always listen. Like even when I didn't like they thought I wasn't paying attention, I was always listening. So I think that that's still like, I want to encourage you.
That means everything to me. Yeah. I'm just going to I'm going to believe that.
Yeah. I really believe that for you.
Thank you.
I feel like I was going to say something else and I totally forgot, but no, I remember being in that phase. Yeah.
And I know that they're growing and discovering and trying to figure things out. And so I'm releasing that expectation of them like acting like they really want to care or caring or whatever. But I'm committed to the outcome of them being able to see this or experience it. And in the end, I feel like it will be for the best.
Yeah. Back on what you're saying about dropping everything. That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
That's very, very important to me. Especially the days that I can't make school pickup or whatever. If I'm working late, I will always come in and like, I'm a mom first. And I think that has been a very, hard boundary that I've had to put in place, especially building, a Young Living business with calls every night, but they're my priority. And that's been a big change of my heart. Not that they have never not been my priority, but I think in the past, I should have shown them that more. So in this new season I'm in, that's like, I'm done working at 3 because I want to pick them up and I want to come home and I'm not working. Like I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to play Magna Child with 5-year-olds.
Yeah. And that isn't it when you are able to, because there will be seasons when it would have been like physically impossible, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, it's easy for you to say because now you're there. And it's like, well, it's true. Because as soon as I could get there, that's what I chose. Because there are seasons where it's like, you're just doing your best. And so I don't want anyone to feel discouraged when they're but it is also true. Like if you can identify like what is the priority in your relationship with them, if it is tucking them in at night, if it is picking them up from carpool, if it is making them a warm breakfast, like that's different for all of us. But being able to just kind of be mindful about maybe you don't you're not on the phone when you're carpooling them from A to Z or whatever it is. There's so many different ways, but I think that just choosing something that means something. So you're intentionally showing them that you are available to them is the key.
There's been so many, I don't want to speak on that too, because there's been a lot of seasons where every night I would have a call right during bath time. I had to put our kids to bed for like a year straight. And those were sacrifices that we made to get to where we are now. And that still happens. Like tomorrow night, I have a call during bath time, and there's days where it is physically impossible for me. But for the most part, like at least an hour is like my goal right now to have uninterrupted. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not answering work emails. I'm literally sitting there playing magician. That's all I want to play with. I'm being a magician with my 5-year-old. I'm very busy.
I'm very busy. I love that so much. That is so fun, like playing magician. And magician days don't last forever. And that's a thing that I think is really a thought that has helped me a lot, is that no season lasts forever. And that is like heartbreaking, because there are beautiful seasons that don't last forever, but there's also really hard seasons, and that season is also not going to last forever. So, and I think that we kind of touched on that when you went through these hard of like, I'm going to the military by myself. I know nothing, no one, what am I doing here? Right. This is intimidating, overwhelming, but I'm going to trust myself to show up. And so it's like, there's that, but then there's also the beautiful seasons of like when you were you in Florida before and you had friends and you had community and it could have been beautiful, but you still felt like you needed to go to, push yourself to North Carolina. And also like, so there's different seasons and no season lasts forever. And I think that's just encouraging for us to really live in the moments of the beautiful and fun and creative and magician times, but also to be able to hold on and to endure and to listen and be open when we're in those seasons that maybe aren't as beautiful and wonderful and fun. And that's so interesting, because I didn't necessarily like think about this topic specifically when I asked you to come on, but I think I see that so much in you, is like the consistent strength that happens regardless of if you are in that season of like joy and thriving, or in that season of really hard work that is like challenging you to push through. I see that in you. And I think that that's exactly what we were meant to talk about today.
So too. Yeah. There's been a lot of that. I feel like when I like look back on my life, but I'm so grateful for all of those seasons of like hard times, because I would not be here and I would not be like the person that, I'm meant to be.
What lesson of growth do you feel like if you're looking back at those like really challenging times, or the unknown charted territory, like the unknown territory, what lesson do you think that you were really able to learn?
I think I've just learned that I can trust myself. I think I didn't really know that at 18, like something kind of just provoked me. I think like something in my soul. And I didn't really know that when Charlie was born. Like I was like, this is scary. And I think I got this. But now like sitting here, I just know myself so well, which is like such a cool feeling. I don't know if it's like 30s or like whatever. I feel like, you just get older and you get wiser, but I know like no matter what is going to come, because I know seasons will change and I know hard times will come, that I trust myself 100% that I'm going to get out of it. And I think like that is a very cool feeling. Scary, still scary, but like,
yeah,
gosh, I trust myself. Like I know I have the tools now where before, like I never used to be vulnerable. I think I even talked to you about this. Like I used to feel like I never had anything important to say. So I would never talk about my problems. Yeah. And so whenever you think that I have depth, it like makes me like want to cry, because I know I do, but I just don't let people in on that a lot. And that's my own big insecurities. But I think like moving forward, like I know when to ask for help. I know I have support. Like I have really good friends that I've never really had, because I have moved so much. And I just think like my relationship with God, like has changed dramatically. And so and like my husband, I have just really great tools, and I'm so thankful for that.
And you have the best attitude. Like you're like the spirit about you is just this. It is all the things that you just shared. And I think also it's so encouraging that the idea, which people are going to be so annoyed by this, but like you may never have known the depth of your strength without these struggles. Like you could have floated on and been joyful and happy and successful and all those things, but the depth and the strength that it showed you in you through those experiences, which we would never ask for them, but like the important part is looking back and noticing them and being grateful for the things that came from the learning.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't change anything. Like as much as I would love to change my daughter, like, with her health struggles, like I truly believe we were given them for a reason. And so like, I'm at such peace. I think like more than anything, I'm just at peace.
Well, and there's always something to learn from no matter what the situation is, because some people have really a lot of peace in saying like, this was meant for me. And some people that is like the most triggering thing you could say is like, this was meant for you. But regardless of what that belief is in that, it's like, it's here and there is always something to learn. And it is always going to pull out like the deepest, strongest parts of me.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Frankie, I love you. I just love you. I love like, there's so much to you. And I just am really grateful that you're willing to open up and share. I know it's super vulnerable. And I forgot that we talked about that you're like, I don't really like to be vulnerable. And I'm like, so tell me everything about the deepest parts of
everything. I think that I don't let people in enough. And I feel like, especially on Instagram, like I don't want to say that it's like shallow, but it's cool when I have these opportunities that my friends get to like hear this side of me too, because there is a lot more to me.
Absolutely.
And I'm, like learning that that's okay to share, and that makes me like more relatable.
Well, it's like what makes you you. And so it's like when like I got to see these parts of you when we had worked together. And so to me, even when it is that you're sharing the light and the fun and whatever, it still feels backed by strength and depth. And so being able for people to be able to like experience the depth and the strength and the vulnerability of you actually doesn't take away from the fun and the light and the beauty. It just like it's backed by it, and it just feels so like full and I don't know, beautiful.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I mean that really changed my life. Like just like getting to meet you guys, all that coaching, like it truly has like transformed me and like how I just act. I feel like I'm just like a totally. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay. Well, we got to end this podcast episode with the two very important questions, this fire in her heart, peace in her soul, being willing and focused and dedicated to dancing with both of those things, the fire that keeps us excited and motivated, but also like we have to keep track of how big we let that fire get, or if it's with intention, and also the side of protecting that piece of our soul so that we have that perfect harmony where we feel fulfilled and we're living in our purpose, but also like enjoying the relationships and the people and the life that we're living around us. So what is something that lights your heart on fire?
Community. I feel like I was put on this earth to like literally unite women. And it's so cool. Different every year of my life. But right now I'm very, very focused. I feel like especially coming out of COVID, there's so many women that were just at home or having anxiety or just need a night out. Like I'm learning that people just need a night to get away from like bedtime routines, and, they don't have, like somebody that will take over to go to dinner. And so I've been really focused on creating events once a month through my store, just uniting women, and like we're doing crafts. We're doing a crafts night in February. Yeah. And we have so many people signed up for that. And that's like such a cool way for me to like learn people's stories, because I think I shared this with you too, that sometimes I feel like clothing can be like shallow. Like that was a big thing that I worked through, and it's not. Like that's such a cool gateway. I've learned that lesson. It's not shallow.
Yes, no, not at all.
But that's like stuff that helps me like really love what I do, because I get to like, it's like cool that people shop with me, but it's even cooler when I like know why you shop with me and like the stories through the clothes that they share with me. So this is like, gosh, the coolest thing. I love
okay. So this is really fascinating, because the other day on my Instagram, I shared that your superpowers are going to be used against you, right? Yeah. So your superpower is gathering women And how it was used against you was when your daughter was sick, you completely withdrew and you could have spent the rest of your life in hiding. Like, how crazy is it that there is this, our superpowers in so many, and that's not the only way. There's going to be 100 other ways that it's going to notice for you. But like the fact that our superpowers, the things that we are called here to do, like we will feel insecure, embarrassed. We will worry. There will also be things in our lives that pull us away from them because that opposition from stopping us from fully stepping into our power. So I actually think that's so cool that you shared that.
I have goosebumps from you saying that. That is so good. That's like such a full circle.
Full circle. Yeah.
Full circle.
And what is something that you do to protect the peace of your soul?
Boundaries. Learn boundaries. That's like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, especially as somebody very non-confrontational, total Enneagram 7. But this last year, I've really, really worked hard on that. Setting boundaries.
And boundaries feel like they're like this mean, bad thing that we're like putting against people, but really it's to keep everyone safe, to keep everyone. It's like, I want to have a relationship with you. In order to keep this relationship, then this is what it has to look like. Or this is not a good time for either of us to be in a relationship, or whatever it looks like, whatever the boundary is. But we are kind of told like, don't have boundaries, and people who don't like boundaries for sure don't like boundaries. But if you can see it as like, this is the kindest way that I can keep, myself healthy, or our relationship healthy, is by setting these like guides for myself, then it's like that. It will absolutely protect the peace of our soul, knowing that the intention is not mean, dagger, or hurtful. Right.
And it's really with myself, like really keeping those promises to myself. Like I've been waking up every day at 5 a.m. I'm doing 75 hard right now.
Yes.
So I completely my diet.
Way to go.
But honestly, I feel like I'm the healthiest version of myself right now because I'm taking time and keeping those promises to myself and keeping those boundaries that I made. And I just feel like I'm in a good place.
That's
like I was
amazing.
actually getting ready for this, putting on my makeup, and something should have stressed me out, but it didn't. I looked at my husband and I said, who is she? Who is this girl who's just keeping her cool? And he goes, I don't know, but I really, really like it. And for like, I don't know. That was just so encouraging to me. I don't even know if he knows that. I feel like I need to go tell him. He's like downstairs. I feel like I'm going to cry. But that was so encouraging to me because a year ago, I probably would have acted completely different towards that situation. So it's just like, it's a good piece that I have.
Also,
right now.
like you loving you gave him permission to also love that part of you.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's so good. You're amazing. Okay, Frankie, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I feel like that's where I'm most active, at Frankie, Frankie.Jean. And then, or my shop, Enchanted on Main.
Enchanted on Main. That's so cute. So many great pieces. You got to check out both of those. We'll link them in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. I just really appreciate you. Yes.
Of course.
That's all we've got for today on the Dance of Growth podcast. One thing that would really help both myself and other women like you is if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Or just share your favorite takeaway from today's episode on social media and tag me at Chelsea Christensen on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember, when you're living a life that has both passion and peace, you are truly living in your purpose. May you always have fire in your heart and peace in your soul.